YouTube channel. My name is Nikolai, and today we're going to start learning basic jazz improvisation. Today we're going to learn how to improvise over jazz tunes using the chords we learned in the last video, in the first and the fourth position. If you haven't seen the last video, I recommend you see that first and then come back and see this video. Here, however, is a recap. We learned 5 types of chords in the last video. 4 main types of chords were the major 7 chord, the minor 7 chord, the dominant 7 chord, and the minor 7 flat 5 chord. We also learned the diminished chord, and we learned them both in position 1 and position 4. You don't really need to know a lot of scales to start improvising over jazz tunes. In this video, I'll teach you how to improvise using only arpeggios that are based on the chords we learned in the last video. This is in of itself a great way to improvise and will give you a much more harmonically rich improvisation, and will teach you to use the chord information when you solo to make it sound really jazzy. This is also beneficial later on when we're going to start improvising with scales, because then it's easy for you to see the chord patterns within the scales and still maintaining that chordal sound in your playing. So what are arpeggios? An arpeggio is a chord played one note at a time instead of all at once. For example, the G7, I could play it like this, and technically that's an arpeggio, but most chords on guitar are played in what are called open voicings. So this is a G7 in a closed position. It consists of a root, the G, the third, the B, the fifth, the D, and the seventh, the F. But any combination of a G, a B, a D, and an F will be some kind of a G7. We don't have to play it like this. But you could spread them out. You could put this G down here. This is still a G7. And you can put the F from here down here. And this is still a G7. And this is what is called open voicings. We don't play the notes as close as possible. We spread them a little bit out to give them air and to make them easier to play. Because this is kind of a stretchy chord. This is a much more comfortable chord to play. And I think it sounds better. But when we're playing arpeggios, we can play all the G's, B's, the D's, and the F in the position. So instead of just playing the ones we play with the open voicing, we can play all of them. So we have a G, a B, a D, and a F. G, B, D, F, G, B. So this is the arpeggio connected to this voicing. So first of all, I will teach you all the arpeggios connected to each of the chords we learned in the last video, starting with the major 7. So this is the G major 7 chord, and this is the G major arpeggio in the first position. And this is the G major 7 chord in the fourth position, and this is its arpeggio. Now we're back on the root, but we can continue. We can also play the 7th again here and the 5th again here. But I will always start these examples playing from the root note because it's easier to see the connection with the chord if we start from the same notes. Remember that you have a couple of notes below that you also can use for improvisation. The next chord we're going to learn is the minor 7 chord, and this is a G minor 7 in the first position, and this is the arpeggio for the G minor in the first position. And in the fourth position, this is a G minor 7 chord, and this is its arpeggio. And remember, we can get a couple of extra notes in the arpeggio down here. The next chord is the dominant 7 chord. This is the chord in the first position, and this is its arpeggio. And minor 7 chord in the 4th position, and this is its arpeggio. And we have a couple of extra notes down there. And this is the G minor 7 flat 5 in the 1st position. And this is its arpeggio. And this is the G minor 7 flat 5 in position 4, and this is its arpeggio. And a couple of extra notes we can get. And finally, this is the G diminished 7 chord in the 1st position, and this is its arpeggio. And this is the G diminished 7 chord in the 4th position, and this is its arpeggio. And we have a couple of extra notes we can utilize. So these are all the arpeggios you need to play solos over the chords we learned in the last video. And with these you can play some really cool jazz solos. So the first step to learn these arpeggios really well is to connect them to the chords that you already know. So you already know, for example, the chord G major 7. And I want you to practice alternating between the arpeggio and the chord. So first you play the chord, and then you play the arpeggio. You play the chord. And you keep alternating that. And do this for every arpeggio. So if I play, for example, the G minor 7 flat 5 up in the 4th position, so you can do this for every chord, just one chord, but it's kind of boring just doing this for a very long time, sitting and just playing an arpeggio up and down. Start improvising as a practice element. So if I want to practice, for example, a G7 chord and its arpeggio, I would rather try to do it with improvisation, like this. So just try to improvise and make up your own lines using these arpeggios. Don't just run them up and down for too long because it gets boring and it's not really musical. So the goal of this exercise is to connect the chord and the arpeggio in your mind. If you do this exercise and practice this, you will start to look at them as one and the same thing. If I see this, I automatically see the whole arpeggio that I can play. And if you do this with all the 5 chord types, in both position 1 and 2, you will get a really good overview of the guitar. And if you do this for all the chords, then if you can play the chord changes, you can improvise over it. So let's start playing on some changes. The next exercise is using the 2-5-1 in major we learned in the last video and improvise over those chords with chords and arpeggios. So the 2-5-1 in G is A minor 7, D7 and G major 7. So first I would just improvise over 1 and 1 chord. And then change to the next chord. And then change to the G major chord. And remember, you don't have to play just up and down. You can play every other note, or you could play patterns like this one, or you can repeat the same notes. So try to find creative ways to play these arpeggios and making music with it. And the point of this exercise is not doing it in time yet. It's just to get used to changing from one chord to the next. From the A to the D to the G major 7. So the next exercise is to play just the arpeggios and try to connect one arpeggio to the next arpeggio in a natural way. And what I mean by that is that if you play the A minor arpeggio, then you know there's a D coming. Where is the closest note to the one that you ended on in the D7 arpeggio? Closest one would be this one. So then the line could be and then try to find the closest note in the next chord or arpeggio, that is the G. And we're already on the 5th, so you could jump up or down to the next chord notes, the 3rd or up to the 7th, or you can just stay. And this is a great way to connecting the arpeggios and making natural lines in your solo playing. And you don't need a metronome yet. You don't stress. Use your time to just find good solutions and just use your time to try to find different solutions, connecting the arpeggios one after another. When you've done this for a while, it's time to put on a metronome or a backing track, starting really slow and just practicing over a 2-5-1 chord progression. So I would start in a ballad tempo, gradually move up to a medium swing tempo. This is a great way to start improvising over jazz tunes. If you do these exercises and you do this work, you will get an excellent overview over where the chords are and how you can arpeggiate them. Of course, it's limited, it's a lot more we can do, but do this first. This is what you need as your foundation. In the next video, I'm going to teach you the great jazz spice called chromatics to really spice up your jazz playing. If you like this video, please consider subscribing to the channel to get future videos. I will continue this series. If you want to, leave a comment below, hit the like button. Until next time, thank you for watching and keep on exploring.